All right, today we're going to talk about hammer forming. Hammer forming is a really old technique. It's been around forever, but a lot of people don't know about it. It's a very simple technique using a form and a hammer, obviously, to produce complex dual curved shapes. So this gusset has a curve going this way. And it's not in a straight line. So if you wanted to form that flange over and this was straight, no big deal. You just put it in a press and press that flange on. But when it comes to making something curved with a flange, it's a little bit you can't do that anymore. So you got to find another technique. And hammer forming is the way to do it. So here's our form, and here is our blank that we're going to make our flange part out of. And as you can see, it fits the form, and then I've left a little bit extra material, probably more than I really need. I probably only really need about 2/3 of that, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. And if you were going to be doing a bunch of these and you really wanted to maintain that shape, real critical shape, you would make 2 of these. You would make a bottom one, and this one has the radiuses ground into it. And this is just a piece of steel. I cut it to the shape, took an angle grinder and radiused the edges. And then I did both edges because now I can make both a left hand and a right hand. I can make one hand going this way, turn around the other side, and make another hand going the other way. So if you really wanted to maintain that nice, tight, crisp line into a perfect shape, you would make a second one that fit this shape. And you would clamp them together, and that keeps the material really tight and in place right along the edge. And then you can form that edge over, and you'll get a really nice, crisp line. In my case, it really wasn't that critical, so I didn't bother making the second part. This is a really good technique, especially if you have to make multiples. They use it a lot in the home aircraft field, where they're making the interior. I think they're called a wing spar, and they're kind of a teardrop shape, obviously with the shape of the profile of the wing. And those, they might have them in there every foot or something. So if you got a 10-foot wing, you're going to have 10 or 12 of those things in there, and they need to all be exactly the same. So someone can make one of those, because they're using aluminum for the wing spar. They can just make that form out of some hardwood, and that'll make 50 or 100 of those things before it starts to wear out. If you're just making the material if you're making your part out of aluminum, you can use a hardwood form, or you can use an aluminum form. In this case, this is steel. I might have got away with a hardwood form, but I had this piece of steel laying around, so figured just easy enough to just use it. So I've got my I got my part clamped in to the vise here, about as close to the edge of the form as I can get, and I put another piece in here that clamps out towards this edge. So it's supported as best I can get, as close to the edge as possible. If you don't get it close to the edge, then it'll start to form away from the radius. And all we do now is just start evenly turning that edge over. And that's really all there is to it. That took probably less than a minute to do. And if you can see that, we've got a nice formed edge. That can be trimmed to make it nice and even. And there's the part. And I figured while I'm here, I'll show you another little trick where the actual parts that I used had a nice little flanged hole in the middle. And then I actually inserted a tube in between the two halves to tie them together and make them stiff. And how I did that is with what's called a dimpler. I made these myself on the lathe. You can buy these, but they are fairly expensive, but they're easy enough to make on the lathe. You just duplicate your whether you want a radius or a chamfered angle in there. You just duplicate an inside and an outside, and they just squeeze together and dimple the material. So we just clamp that in the vise. We put our piece on. The end of this has a little pilot on it that fits into a pre-drilled hole. You drill your hole to size, and that locates it so that you don't get a cockeyed hole. Otherwise, you'll get your hole will wander off center a little bit. And then we just turn that down. And there we have a nice little dimpled hole.